Hello, and welcome to Films and Fandoms with Kaylee. Before I get started, NAFCO would like to thank its sponsors, West PA Systems, the electrical design build contractor for your 21st century home and business, and Dakota, the Du Bois Area Council of the Arts. So before I get into what this episode's going to be about, if you hear a fan in the background, that is because I got a new system, so hopefully I have a new PC thanks to Mike Gaffner, so thank you, Mike, for that. And if you hear it, it's just the fan. I promise it's okay. It might be a bit noisy, so we'll see how it works. Alright, so today I'm going to be going into the 6th episode of Moon Knight, also the season finale, called Gods and Monsters. And the summary for this episode is: as Moon Knight joins the fray, Marc, Steven, and Khonshu must work together to stop Ammit. The directors for this episode are Justin Benson, Mohamed Diab, Aaron Moorhead, and the writers are Jeremy Slater, Daniel Iman, and Doug Monich. So, as I said, this is going to be a season finale, and I'll get into more of that at the end of the episode. Okay, so we start with, we hear a song called The End by Earl Grant, and the lyrics are about how there's a pot of gold at the end of the story as the Marvel logo rolls, and there's a bit of irony with that, as this is the season finale, as I had mentioned. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next, and I'll also get into more into that at the end. But we see Marc laying in the water, dead, and two of Hera's men are dragging him out of the water and lay him on the steps, and they find the Shapti. Hera says, "I'm sorry it had to be this way, Marc Spector, Stephen Grant, whoever else there might be," as he places the scarab on his chest. Layla is hiding behind a pillar, staying quiet. Hera says that sometimes we need the cold light of death before we could see reality. Layla then almost quietly, takes down a goon, and Hera reveals the Shapti to his followers, who all take a knee, asking them who wants to heal the world. Then the staff turns into a crocodile head by flipping over, and has an axe head, which is important later. And they all leave. Layla then goes to Marc's body and is trying to wake him, but he's dead. So she starts crying and laying her head on his chest, then kissing his forehead. She picks up the scarab and puts the body back in the water, and the scarab floats. And there's a bit of irony with the whole water thing, and I'll get into that in a minute. So then we see a caravan of jeeps and trucks driving through the desert. They hit a main road and run into a blockade. Things get heated pretty quickly as Hera's men gets out and guns are drawn on him. Hera then uses his staff to judge all the soldiers, and only one of them lives, and it joins the disciples. And then we get a shot of Layla revealing that she's stuck onto the truck, and also revealing that Marc guessed correctly in that she would try to do this on her own. Layla then pulls out her knife and goes to make her move, but Tawara possesses a dead soldier, warning Layla not to do it, and Marc's the one telling her to stop. Layla asks what this is. Tawara tells Layla that Marc's dead, and she's talking to her through dead people right now. She then tells Layla that Hera's too powerful for her to stop him on her own, and then tells Layla that if Marc could return to life, Layla asks what she means by return to life, which I think it's fairly obvious, but I guess after watching someone you love get brutally shot, that would mess you up. So I'm gonna let it slide. However, it tells Layla that Marc's gonna need Khonshu and to break his Ushabti in the Chamber of the Gods, and offers to have Layla as her avatar. And Marc says wonderful things about her. Layla puts her knife away and says she'll fight him on her own. And then everyone gets back in the vehicles and they climb up the Pyramid of Giza. And Hera opens the chamber. We see all the Indian gods come in, and Cyrus's avatar says about the disturbance, and your gods felt it too. Horus's avatar asks what it means. Yatzil says that someone is trying to release Ammit. Horus's avatar asks why. Cyrus's avatar realizes it's Hera. Which, I hate that the gods are all acting like, oh no, like, who could have predicted this? And like, why we didn't stop this? And like, what is it? What does this mean? What do you mean someone's trying to release Ammit? As if 2 episodes earlier they weren't warned by Marc. Like, that was the whole point of episode 3. Oh, it was, yeah, wait, was it 3? Yeah, it was 3. Was because that was the original plan. Was Khonshu was gonna cause some chaos in order to summon the gods to get an audience, and then they were gonna make their case that Harrow is dangerous. But Harrow basically gaslit Marc, so the gods didn't believe him and blamed Harrow. Which is how, like, I know it was episode 4. It was episode 4. My bad. It's episode 4. This happened. Like, they were warned that Harrow was gonna release Ammit, and yet they act like they didn't know it was gonna happen. After friggin' Alright. Harrow then busts into the pyramid, busts into the pyramid, telling his followers they won't believe what the gods have kept hidden from mankind. Harrow tells the gods they're judges, not warriors, and this doesn't need to happen. Harrow then kills him off screen as Layla breaks off and heads to the chamber. Harrow tells the dead gods, basically, or the downed, and it could have been avoided. And Harrow gets the Ushabti and smashes it against the ground, and we get some cool purple smoke as we see the character design for Ammit, which I must say is very cool, because there's like the crocodile head, just the detail on the head of the crocodile, with like a little bit of like crocodile body, and then and then she has some like braids too, so it's very cool when everyone like gets down on a knee and bows. And then we see Layla has found Khonshu's Ushabti. Ammit asks, to whom do I owe my gratitude? Or something like that. And Hera says, your humble disciple, my goddess, to whom you owe nothing. Ammit then tells Hera his scales lack balance. Hera accepts his fate, saying he had hoped his penance might correct his imbalance. but he sees now that's impossible, and he accepts the scales regardless of the outcome. Ammit tells Harrow that his scales lack balance because of what lies ahead of him. Harrow says they must spare the world the pain he will cause, and says, "I willingly submit," as if he hasn't already caused enough pain, because literally first time we see him in action, he literally, like, is judging people. But Ammit says what lies ahead of him is his service to her. Harrow then asks how he may serve her in death. Ammit says his death is delayed, and she once relied on a servant who had balanced scales, and she ended up bound to stone for 2,000 years. Harrow tells her he has disciples all over the world whose scales balance perfectly, awaiting her command, and they are worthy, and calls Ammit my goddess again. Which, that's just weird, because this next bit's kind of weird, because Ammit says Harrow is the one who set her free, so he's the avatar that she needs. Ammit, serve me and you will find peace. And it gets kind of weird because Ammit then grabs, like, Harrow's hair and then pulls his head back. Which I'm not gonna get into why that is weird, but it is a bit weird. Though, I guess we don't. I guess I can't really say anything different. So, we're not gonna kink shame here, okay? We're not gonna do that. It's only slightly weird because it's, like, it's not even human. So, but again, we're not gonna kink shame on this podcast. And Harrow says, "As you wish," and his eyes turn purple. Layla breaks Khonshu's Yashafti, and Khonshu tells Layla that he doesn't sense Marc in this world, and he died fighting, no doubt. Layla gets pissed, like, fighting your war. Khonshu says it's far from over, and if Marc is truly gone, he's in need of an avatar. Khonshu then tries getting Layla to be his avatar, but Layla basically asks if he's joking, and he turned Marc's life into a waking nightmare, and why would she ever sign up for that? Khonshu tells Layla that she won't win against Harrow and Ammit alone. Layla says she'll take her chances, and Khonshu tells Layla Marc was in crisis over her, and his lack of focus got him killed, and she needs a plan, calling her little bug, and goes to make her an offer, and Layla tells him she doesn't care what he can offer, as Marc didn't trust him, and she doesn't trust him, and basically to piss off, and they'll work together without her enslaving herself. Which I must say, Layla is a complete badass, because any other show would have had, any other show would have had Layla, without hesitation, say yes to Khonshu. Out of, like, her love for Marc. But she's like, yes, I'm gonna save the man I love. But I'm gonna do it my way. And I'm gonna make it without, like, doing myself to hell, basically. So, I find that very admirable, which is why I love Layla, and she's a badass. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm pansexual, or panromantic asexual. So, but I am attracted to women, and Layla is one of them. So yeah. Alright, continuing on, Khonshu explains that they have to rebind Ammit, and Layla asks how. Khonshu says only an avatar can do it, and Layla reminds him she said no. And Khonshu then dissipates. And Ammit tells the Khonshu, like, let us purify the souls of Cairo and then the world. Or no, Ammit tells the followers, let us purify the souls of Cairo and then the world. Then Khonshu blocks her path, and Ammit tells Khonshu time has been cruel to him. Khonshu says it has, and it cannot allow her to proceed. Hero then tells a couple of his followers to track down whoever released Khonshu. We then see Marc in the field of reeds, and Tueret tells Marc the scales are balanced and the hearts are full and his journey is over. Marc says it's quiet, and Tueret says it's the peace he's always wanted but never had. You're manifesting it. No danger, no loneliness or hurt. So basically, but the field of reeds is the equivalent to heaven, but it's also like what you like want most in life, and like what you you get the things you've never had. Like so because like Marc basically spent his life in chaos, if you want to think about it, and like has always had like someone with him, always, basically. Now he gets a chance to like be at peace and quiet and no danger. Like he can finally rest. Which I guess if all people deserve it, it would be him. But like the Marc can't live without Steven, because, and then Marc actually asks about Steven, and Tueret tells him that Steven's gone to the and the Duat has him, and tells Marc to enjoy his peace. Marc says he's gonna go back for him, and Tueret warns Marc that it doesn't work like that, and once he leaves, he can't go back, and he doesn't need him anymore. Marc says he gets to go on to eternal peace, and Steven just is lost in the sands forever. And Marc is not good with that, and he starts walking away as Tueret warns him not to think about it. Then Marc ends up in the Duat and starts looking around, and he does find Steven's body. And you can tell some time has passed because Steven's body is partially covered with sand. Ammit tells her followers that her path is set the same as anyone's, and she's here to bring balance as she's circling Khonshu. Khonshu says she speaks of balance, yet chooses Harrow. Yet she chooses Harrow and says her avatar is a sinner, which, I must say, Khonshu, you're being a bit of a hypocrite here, I must say, and I'll explain why. Because, Khonshu literally chose Marc as his avatar when he knew that Marc was mentally ill and was at his lowest and his mind full of chaos and not like balance, and Marc was a merc. like talk about preaching to the choir there, Khonshu. like Ammit says he's jealous of his loyalty, and Khonshu asks at what cost an empty world for her disciples to inherit, and then Hera tells Ammit to not listen to him, and he only wants to keep her bound. So Marc finds Stephen in front of the gates of Osiris and kneels down in front of him. And Marc starts a bit of a speech here. He says, "Stephen, looking pretty rough, man. I don't think you could hear me. For the moment you arrived, way back then, we were so young, you saved me. I survived because I knew I wasn't alone. You're always there, alive, full of hope. And I tried to protect that, and I failed. I couldn't protect you." And then Marc slowly starts turning to stand, starting with his hands. And Marc continues on saying, "But you didn't abandon me. You didn't abandon me. And although that field back there was looking pretty good, there's no way in hell I'm gonna abandon you. You're the only real superpower I ever had." It's just kind of sweet because, like, it's sweet because Stephen came out of a need to protect Marc. Like, that was the point of Stephen, was to protect Marc. And that's, like, what Stephen did, and what he always did was protect Marc. And now Marc's kind of returning the favor a bit, and I find that sweet. As Marc turns to stand, he's holding, like, he holds the heart, and he, like, grabs Stephen's hand, and his heart's in between, and then Osiris' gate opens, and the heart glows, and Stephen and Marc start to return, and they help each other up. Stephen says, "You came back? What the hell is wrong with you?" And there's, like, smiling. Marc's like, "Well, I did a little speech there." Stephen says it wasn't that little, which means Stephen heard him. I found that even better, the fact that Stephen actually heard him say that. Right. They hug, and Stephen realizes the gates are open. So back to the pyramid. Ammit tells Khonshu is, like, for a god he's low of faith. Khonshu says she'll never learn. Then Ammit kicks Khonshu, and they have a fight. Of course, breaking Karat. And at the Duat, a sandstorm is coming for Marc and Stephen, and they run to the gates, and Tawara steers the boat to buy them some time to leave, saying, like, "Osiris, Yod Softe." And she's whooping and hollering, and then she, like has her arms up, and is just like, "Now run!" And this whole thing's intercut with Ammit and Khonshu fighting. And Stephen's whooping, and then is yelling, like, "Hippo!" I just find that adorable. I love Stephen. And Marc, too. Ammit tells Khonshu to say when to stop, and Khonshu says he chooses obliteration over mercy. Continuing on, Marc and Stephen make it through the gates, and Khonshu senses Marc's alive. Marc comes up, and he gets up, and because he's, like, essentially still dying, he gets up and calls for Khonshu, and then we get, like, flashbacks of Marc and Stephen moments. Then we have a Khonshu voiceover, or essentially Khonshu's kind of saying the same thing that he told Marc during the first suit up, essentially. And the bullets fall to the ground, and Marc gets up, and the suit starts coming around him, slowly healing him. Then they meet outside. They meet Khonshu outside. And keep in mind, this is the Moon Knight suit, I should say. Khonshu's like, "I knew you'd miss me." And Marc's like, Layla turned it down, didn't she? Like, that's my girl. And Khonshu tells Marc that Ammit has been freed and he was not strong enough to stop her and he needs Marc's help. He's like, I need your help, Marc Spector. Or whatever he says. Then Steven fronts wearing the Mr. Knight suit and says, just curious about something. How is this new arrangement gonna work? And keep in mind this transition is like instant, no flashes, like we had seen previously. Which I love to show how like Marc and Steven are now like one of the same, kinda. And how they exist now in harmony. I guess is more what I'm looking for. And then Khonshu's like, Steven Grant, I was not speaking to you. It seems like, well, we do kind of come in like a package deal now. So, yeah, you're gonna have to deal with me. And we did save your life. And Steven then Cecily sits on a rock saying, no, you really should answer my question. Like, how's this deal gonna work? And I'm just like, you would negotiate now with so much at stake? It seems like, well, we did learn from the best, you silly old bird. And Khonshu then offers to release them both and give him his word. It seems like, alright. I like the sound of that. And then he gets up and is like, alright, now, how the heck are we gonna get to Cairo? Khonshu is like, you forget, little worm. I'm still the god of the night sky. And this guy starts turning black and he's like, you know, I think you could take this one, Marc. Khonshu then tells them to, like, hurry up, idiots. So then Marc fronts and we see him in the Moon Knight suit fly up and we get the crescent moon. We get the full glory of the crescent moon cape over a full moon, which I find cool. And it was a cool shot. Alright, we're back at the pyramid. Layla finds Osiris' avatar and she gets him to safety. And then he asks if she's one of Khonshu. Layla tells him she is. And Layla gets him to the tunnels and leads him against the wall and asks him how do they stop Ammit. Pirzada's tell her the chamber is their most powerful place, and from there they have to imprison her in a mortal form. Layla points out she'd be vulnerable as she's in a body and not a statue, then asks how she does it. Osiris tells her they need more avatars than they have left, and then he collapses on the ground, dying. Layla tries getting him awake, but it doesn't work, and she sees he's dead. Now she's like, Turret, you there? And then Turret's she's like, Layla! We're gonna have so much fun together. But Harrow hears them, and Layla catches that he heard them. And Arrow knocks over a couple of statues and causes a mess. And Turret possesses Layla, just like realizing Layla's changed her mind, and she'd be delighted to accept her as her avatar. And Layla takes control, saying it's only like temporary avatar. Turret's like, of course. Oh, your father's going to be over the moon when he hears. And I must say, I was like, my father? And I must say, I know everyone talks about, especially this episode, how Oscar Isaac seemingly switches from Marc to Steven. But I haven't really seen people talking about how Calamawy switches from Tuaret to Layla and back again. Like, no, granted it's a bit different than how Marc and Steven do it, which of course would make sense. But it's still like impressive to go from like the higher pitch, like big gestures to Layla, more contained, like draining a bit. Which did remind me a bit of when Marc was, or when Khonshu was speaking through Marc, how like exhausted he got, like breathing heavy, and then like it was kind of, I think, like taking a lot of his energy to like do this. And I think there's similar situations happening between Torara and Layla, because Layla, like, she like is like all high, and then like when it goes back to Layla, she like collapses against a wall. So yeah, everyone deserves awards after this episode because it's amazing. And Torara says, like, we're doing this for what? Oh, I have a fabulous costume in mind. And then rubble falls. Marc is still flying over to Cairo. You see Harold climbing like gets to the top of the pyramid. He just starts casting a spell, and it possesses some of the people. And you see like the scale tattoo put on some of them, and then a woman starts yelling for the followers of Ammit to judge everyone. And then people start grabbing arms, and some get disintegrated, and souls are causing Ammit to grow. And we're back at the rubble, and we pan up, we see gold boots, and then we pan up to see Layla in a badass scarab-themed costume, which I must say, and we now see her as a scarlet scarab, because there's like red stripes, and there's like the mandibles, I think is what they're called, and there's like a bit of white, like white top a bit with like gold armbands. And what's cool, and then she does like she crosses her arms and does like this surprised Pikachu, or like the one stance. I'm trying to think. I called it a surprise Pikachu stance earlier, but I don't think that's it. But I'm trying to think how to describe it, because she just kind of like gets down and like unfolds her arm, like a bit of a Wolverine thing, maybe. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like a Wolverine thing, where she like pulls out two blades, and it's the wings pop out. And I must say, what I love about the suit, besides the fact that it's a scarab theme, and Layla's father called her his little scarab, what I love about this suit is it's the right mix of sexy and practical. Because, like, the armor, like, it is actually protective and, like, is practical for in a fight. Like, it has, like, good range of motion. It covers the important bits. But still, like, looks sexy. So, applaud costume department, character designers, applaud for good costuming. Because one thing I hate in film is when a costume is impractical for the situation. And it goes both ways, because, like, with women, it's in, like, skin-tight suits that barely have any range of motion and are not practical at all. And for men, it's usually like wearing suits, because, like, I haven't worn a suit myself, but you don't get a good range of motion that you would need in a fight in a suit. So, applaud costume design for making the Scarlet Scarab suit, practical and sexy at the same time. And actually, continuing on like the theme of costumes, I want to point out, like, with the double standard with costumes, how there's a show out there called The Boys. Now, I have not seen it myself, but it is on Prime Video. And one of the characters, I don't know like the superhero name, but I know the actor's name is Chase Crawford. And for his character, because it's about superheroes basically, basically superheroes that get monetized and become a part of this like corporation and are basically sold. But I remember reading something just today actually, that the costume designer for the outfit that Chase Crawford wears put butt pads in the bottom of his suit, or put butt pads in the suit because it was to point out like the double standard and show how because usually she said how usually she's asked, like, especially when designing like female suits or female superhero costumes, it's usually asked, can you make her boobs bigger? And the point of having the butt pads in Chase Crawford's costume was part of the character journey for that character, like dealing with his own toxic masculinity and toxic masculinity and his own body dysmorphia, because of like the standards we put on both men and women when it comes to like the superhero suit, and when it comes to like superheroes and how they're supposed to look. So, and yeah, because fun fact, most of the time when you see like the shirtless male superhero scenes where you see like all the ripped abs and like all the muscles bulging, that is because they are severely dehydrated and nearly passing out, because the body pulls water from like the muscle in order to survive, but that makes the muscles more defined, which in turn looks, I use sexier in quotes, and looks more muscular. But it is incredibly dangerous, and you should not do that. And that practice needs to stop. And it's a similar situation with women in media, how usually when they get a superhero suit, it is lots of cleavage, like nice like rounded ass, and like skin tight, and usually like they have to like starve themselves to like fit into the costume, and then they have to like, they barely get range of motion to even like do like any acting or stunt work or whatever they're doing. And that's even for like stunt performers. Like a lot of stunt performers get hurt because like they have they like have to wear heels for fight scenes, or like don't have good range of motion. So like I know everyone, we need to change like both male and female superhero costumes to change that standard of what male and female superheroes look like, which is what's interesting about Moon Knight in particular, because you have not only a Arab female superhero who isn't super skinny. I mean, she's she's beautiful. Like Calamawy is absolutely beautiful as Layla, particularly in that in the boat scene with the lighting. It's because it's the lighting that does it. But she's not she's shown to be beautiful because of her self-worth, and I absolutely love that, how they don't tie Layla's self-worth into Marc and Steven, but they tie her self-worth into her love for Marc and Steven. Because as I'm pretty sure I said this before, but the fact that she told Khonshu to piss off and she'll do it her own way, because so many stories would have had Layla immediately, without hesitation, say yes to Khonshu, and then would have caused an issue later on, because they would have gone into an argument over about her saying yes. But she's still able to do it without enslaving herself to Khonshu, at least. Because now Terrera does seem to have honest intentions, so that will be that'll be quite interesting to see, especially after the ending, if we see more of Layla as Scarlet Scarab. But not only the fact that we get, as it said, an Arab woman, but we also get a Latino male, older Latino male, I must say, though he looks good for it, with Oscar Isaac, who is Guatemalan, I believe. And he is also, and keep in mind, there is actually no shirtless scenes in this series. I just realized, we don't see Marc or Steven ever shirtless. Most of the time Steven's in normal clothes. Marc, they aren't in suits ever. In fact, I think they're in the entirety of episode 5, they were in freaking sweats, and and so I just like that, how I do like how they don't go into the stereotypes, because like the last time we had any sort of era or any time before we had an Arabian character on. It's usually been a terrorist. So I'd like to see the change. And I'll go in a bit more into why I think that change is important a bit later, because I gotta keep going with this. So we're gonna keep going. Alright, so Marc's still flying, and we see Harrow still chanting. Then Marc lands at like the bottom of the pyramid. Marc starts running. Marc runs up as Harrow runs down, and then Marc kind of flies forward. They both kind of fly forward, but Marc knees Harrow and like kind of like grabs him. Khonshu also appears, and then begins, and Steven like fronts, and then he falls, but then Marc fronts and grabs Harrow and saves him. And we get Khonshu and Ammit having a sort of kaiju style battle, a bit like Godzilla versus King Kong, kind of a bit, which is interesting. And as Khonshu hits Ammit with a staff, then because his staff has like that crescent moon shape, he pins Ammit by the neck against the pyramid, and Marc and Harrow fall into the stream. Ammit tells Khonshu there's little difference for what they want in the world, and asks him why do the stands for the rest of them. Khonshu says she knows the answer, and he only punishes those who have chosen evil. Ammit wraps a tail around Khonshu's legs and says she does too, only she doesn't give them the satisfaction of committing it. And then Khonshu falls on his face, and Ammit tells him to be at her side. Marc tries to get up, but Harrow hits him over the face with the staff as Harrow powers up the staff, about to suck Marc's soul, which, yes, sounds weird. Layla power knees him, and Marc kind of sees Layla in the suit. And Harrow gets up and sends an energy beam towards Layla, but she uses her wings to block the beam and sends it back, knocking Harrow a ways away. And Marc walks up. Layla walks up, like, Marc! And then Layla, and they run towards each other. Marc's like, Layla! He says, oh, baby. It is more than relieved she's okay. And I must say that, oh, baby, was the most adorable thing ever. And it's just the relief that they have about how, like, relieved they are to see each other again, and just shows how much love they do still have for each other, even though like they were about to get divorced. And I like Marc and Layla. Okay, well, I like Marc, Steven, and Layla. So and then what's funny is Layla asks how he got back, and I thought of this quote from Supernatural. It takes place sometime in season 13. After Cass has died again, and he makes it out of the empty. Sam and Dean find him after Cass called him, and they go up to him, and Dean's like, how are you alive? And Castiel says, I annoyed an ancient cosmic being so much they sent me back. Which is kind of what Marc and Steven did, if you think about it, because like they annoyed Taweret enough to get her involved, and probably annoyed Osiris enough to send him back. So yeah. It's kind of adorable here as we see. And then Steven fronts, and you know it's Steven because he has like the Mr. Knight suit, and he doesn't have the mask on. And Steven fronts and is like, "Wow, you look amazing. What are you wearing?" Like so ecstatic. Then you see Harrow stands up, and there's lots of goons with guns walking towards them. And Khonshu gets up as Ammit asks why fight no one will fail. Khonshu tells her because it's his choice, the very thing she take away, and he swings his staff and Ammit bites it. Steven like looks over to Layla and is like, "I'm really jazzed to show you these new skill sets we have." Layla kind of gets her flaring out of it, is like, "All right, show me what you got." And we get a badass Layla and Steven and Marc team up, kind of. It's like, it goes from like Layla fighting, and then to like show her moves, and then we get Steven freaking double punching 2 people, and we get an excellent use of the batons, like hitting people, kicking. Like there's one part where Harrow sends an energy beam, and Marc like does a flip over the beam, or Steven does a flip over the beam, and it kind of reminds me of this hallway fight from Daredevil. Though I haven't seen Daredevil in a while, so I don't remember what like season or episode it is. But basically, Matt goes to fight a bunch of dudes in a hallway, and it's one shot. Camera doesn't really move a whole lot, and it's mainly because he uses batons too. And in that scene, he's like fighting all these dudes, and as he's going, he's like getting tired, which of course it makes sense. But I just love how Steven, like, it shows how Steven and Marc are this whole fight that we're about to see shows how Marc and Steven are now in harmony. It's like Steven's like more confident now too, because you know it's like he's like getting cocky a bit, and he's able to like take on all these goons. And there's one part, before we continue on, another round of applause for Oscar Isaac, stunt choreographers and stunt coordinators, and then stuntmen too, for not only Oscar Isaac but May Calamawy too. Round of applause for y'all, because that was one of the best fights. Just that like segment. This whole segment is probably like my favorite fight scene I've seen. Just because of how it's shot, and just how it's shot and how it's just coordinated is amazing. What's cool is like Steven goes to throw his baton at Harrow, and Harrow knocks it away with his staff, but Marc catches it. And pretty sure he kills a goon with it by hitting him with it. We see Khonshu is once again on the ground, so he's losing. Marc and Layla team up to take out more goons, and we get some more speed up and slow down. Because like the camera kind of keep like speeds as Marc jumps over a car, or jumps on a car, and then jumps, goes on his back, throws his two moon blades, and then goes back on his feet and runs. And Layla starts taking on Harrow, and Marc joins her. Though Harrow sets off an energy blast, sending Marc and Layla back. Khonshu is losing his fight with Ammit as he's once again on his back. Harrow walks up to Layla and puts the staff against her as Layla has her blades crossed to block him. And then Steven pushes Harrow into a kitchen counter which has TVs on it. When it gets sentenced to the wall, Steven punches Harrow a couple times, getting him back. Flicks his suit collar, brushes his shoulder, and then gets right back into it, but he gets thrown across the street. Then you see a grappling hook shoots out, connects to like a gutter or something. And we see Marc pull. Yeah, and Marc comes out and knees Harrow. Basically using the grappling hook to gain momentum. Layla holds the staff, and her and Marc are both like pushing and pulling against the staff, and we see a family get in a van, and Harrow sets off an energy blast, hitting the van, sending it to its side, and Layla saves the young girl from getting hit, and the young girl asks in Arabic if she's an Egyptian superhero. Layla says she is, and Layla then gets the van door off, and everyone gets out and fights a couple goons. So I must say, and I love that scene there, because it shows just how like important this representation is, especially for this like little Arabian girl, because as I kind of was talking about earlier, like the only Arabic representation that they have in the MCU, and really anywhere in media if you want to think about it, or just broaden that scope, at least that I'm familiar with, which is thing. But the only Arabic representation that they have is usually terrorists, and I don't think I've ever heard of a piece of media that has an Arabic character that's not a bad guy. So it's so cool to see like an Arabic superhero, and that like they have that representation. And I just love Layla, guys, okay? And I just love how, especially that scene with like Layla and I just kind of thought of this, but this scene also kind of reminds me of the fact that Layla and Marc, like Layla doesn't necessarily, like we see that Layla doesn't necessarily need Marc or Steven to hold her own in a fight, because she can hold her own in a fight, as we're about to see. And though she does work well with Marc and Steven, as we saw, and that does kind of go into, because in the first episode we meet Layla. The second episode we meet Layla, and she reveals that like they fought side by side together. So it would make sense that like they know each other, that they would know each other's fighting styles, and would know, and like still have that like trust in each other, and that competence to be like, okay, I trust that you can handle this guy, so I'm going to Hello everyone, so I am actually recording this segment um, as I'm editing this because I don't know exactly what had happened, but somehow a huge chunk of my recording somehow got destroyed. And I do not know how to get it back. And I also don't want to re-record the episode. So, I'm just gonna continue off with where I left. So basically, as I was saying, as you last heard me say, like with that trust between Marc and Layla and Steven, that like Layla can run off and she trusts that Marc can take Harrow to buy her time, and Marc knows that Layla can take care of herself. So continuing on, Harrow sends Marc flying into the ground. That Marc gets up and is pushing against an energy beam, and Harrow tells Marc that had Ammit been allowed to rule, Randall's life would have been saved, his family would have been happy, and she only needed to remove one weed from the garden, which was Marc. Layla goes to help Marc, but Marc loses control of his blade, and he sends it towards Layla, and it pins her wing against a vehicle, and he gets sent back onto the ground and is unmasked. Harrow walks over and is sucking the soul out of Marc, and he sees Khonshu's losing. So Layla's getting shot at, and she's barely holding on because the goons are like shooting at her through the she has their wing up covering her face, but the goons are shooting at her wings point blank range. And we see the flashes, or Marc sees that, and then the flashes happen, and that's important to point out. And Marc then is above Harrow, the staff, like the axe blade, to Harrow's head, and Harrow is barely conscious. And we see a lot of dead goons and fire. Marc asks Steven if that was him, and Steven fronts and says not a chance. Layla gets her wing unstuck, asking Marc, like, what the hell was that? And Marc's kind of scared, and he's shaking a bit, saying he blacked out. Then they see Khonshu being dragged by Ammit. Layla grabs his staff and tells Marc to grab Harrow, and she knows how to stop Ammit, and that's what Marc does. They head to the pyramid and set Harrow on a slab, and Layla tells Marc that the power of the room will help them bind Ammit to Harrow's body, and they start a spell. Ammit, sensing she's about to be bound, wraps her tail around Khonshu, saying this could have been paradise, and Khonshu says it's too late and she will be destroyed. Marc and Layla continue chanting, and Ammit is bound to Harrow, and Ammit tells him that it can never contain her, and she'd never stop. They finish the spell, and Khonshu comes over and tells Marc to finish it and leave neither of them alive. Marc gets his blade out and is holding it. Khonshu says that while Harrow lives, so does Ammit. Marc says he has to finish this, if not, he'd never be free. Layla then stops Marc, saying he has the choice and is free, and Khonshu argues the choice is still vengeance, and they cannot take the chance that Ammit finds a way out and she'd kill again. Marc points out that Khonshu sounds like Ammit, and then drops Harrow on the slab and tells Khonshu, do it yourself. Then, as to release him, Khonshu agrees, and the suit comes undone and everything turns white. We go back to the psych ward and the psych ward office. Steven's fronting, asking Harrow if this is what reality looks like. Harrow says the imagination is very real and everything was created in the imagination. Steven then asks if he thinks Khonshu and Ammit are real. Harrow says he doesn't, and then we kind of see Marc fronting easily and asks what if they agree, and Harrow seems kind of shocked, like shook a bit that he sees it's Marc. Marc asks whether they believe something different. Hera then says their work continues. And he starts, as he's walking, you can see the bloody footprints. Stephen asks for how long. Hera says for as long as a piece of string. Marc asks Stephen quietly if he sees like the bloody footprints, and Stephen confirms he does. Hera asks why he's bleeding, and Stephen then stands up, saying he doesn't think he knows as much as he thinks he does. Marc fronts, saying while it's tempting to accept the diagnosis, Stephen fronts, saying they'd rather go save the world, then says, later, skaters, and falls back, and everything goes white again. Alright, so after the white screen happens, it comes back, and we see Stephen waking up in his apartment to a man without love, which is kind of fitting for Stephen, but it also mirrors the opening where that's how we first saw Stephen. Was he woke up and that song was playing. Right. Stephen gets pulled back by his ankle restraint and falls right on his face, also mirroring the opening. Then we get the end credits. But there's more, because we have a post-credit scene. We see Harrow is now in a psych ward as well. Not entirely sure where, but he's in a psych ward nonetheless. And he just says sand. He's like sand, and he spills his coffee, and it's just like, alright, time for bed. And we see a man in a black suit, or dark suit, I should say, and black gloves, grab Harrow's wheelchair, saying he's got him, though he's speaking Spanish. And the man, and he's telling her to calm down, and he's got him. And Harrow kind of sees who it is, but then you see Harrow getting wheeled away, and we see a lot of dead people littered throughout the psych ward. Harrow then gets taken to a white limousine. Door opens. Harrow gets in roughly, and the man kicks the wheelchair. Then Harrow chuckles, and we see it's Khonshu in a new suit. And Harrow tells Khonshu he can't hurt them. Khonshu's like, yeah, then, like, do you want to know something? Then asks if he wants to know something. And then Khonshu says, Marc Spector truly believed that after he and I parted ways, I wanted his wife to be my avatar. And Harrow's doing the blah 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 hands. Doing the blah 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 hands, I guess you should say. And Khonshu continues saying, why would I ever need anybody else when he has no idea how troubled he is? Khonshu then taps on the glass, and the divider opens, and Khonshu says, meet my friend, Jake Lockley. And we meet the third altar. And he has been teased throughout the entire series. Then Jake says in Spanish, today is your turn to lose, and then shoots Harrow. And the limo drives up, and it has Spectre on the front and the back. Which, alright. So, and that is the end of episode 6 of Moon Knight. So I absolutely loved this show so much, between the writing and just the acting between everyone, and just the fights and the choreography was amazing. And I really want a season 2, and I hope we do, because they advertise this as a season finale. And I loved how that final thing was shot with, like, you had, like, the smaller fight between Harrow, Layla, and Marc and Steven. And then there's, like, the kaiju battle between Khonshu and Ammit. And I also really loved the design of the costume, the Scarlet Scarab costumes. And I noticed something I didn't point out is with the Moon Knight costume. It looks like it wraps around Marc like it's a mummy. And in Egyptian mythology, that's how mummies would work. That's how mummies worked, is after you died, your organs would be taken out and you would be wrapped in cloth. And that's kind of what Marc's suit is essentially like a mummy, because Khonshu brought him back from the dead. But also with the Mr. Knight costume being a white suit, because it more like how the Moon Knight suit is more with the traditional ancient Egyptian ideals, with the like with the mummy wrappings. You get the more modern take, with, because usually when you see someone with a funeral, when they're laying in the casket, they typically are in a suit, or like some, like, dressed very nice in a suit. So I find that interesting, like, just how that relates to, like, death and resurrection. And the scarab, I think, also has to deal with death and resurrection. And now how like, we get kind of the reverse of what we got at the intro, with like Marc and Steven are now in harm, like with Gus being like, they're presenting how Steven's in his own little bubble, and Marc is in his own separate thing. And now how at the end there was like 2 fish in the fish tank, which signals that, like, Marc and Steven are now living in harmony, or are now, like, working together are now, like, in harmony. Though I'm not sure if they still have the suit. So if they still have the suits or not. And with Jake now still working with Khonshu and speaking Spanish with, like, never mind. Sorry. Also find it, we get the reverse with now Marc and Steven living in their own bubble, and now Jake's, like, the one doing his own thing. And so I find that interesting. And we also get these interesting themes about choice and truth, because we have Khonshu, who, we have, each character kind of represents a different ideals with, like, the choice and the truth, because we see Marc, who had a very hard truth to live with, and live with that, and then he had a choice, and he chose, like, he was about to make a choice of life or death, and that Khonshu gave him life and essentially took away his choice by having Marc do what he asked. And then we get this another thing with with Steven, and now that Steven learned that he was an alter in a system and not his own, well, I'm gonna say not his own, I don't want to say not his own person, because it's not exactly how it works, I don't think, but I guess for this analogy, Steven thought he was his own person, and he wasn't. And then when he learned the truth, he made the choice. Essentially, he originally was going to choose innocence, but he, in a way, also kind of didn't have a choice in the matter, because he was involved regardless, and he wasn't going to stop him. He wasn't going to be safe again unless he fixed it. So he essentially kind of had his choice taken a bit, because with Khonshu, he offered Marc false choice. He offered two things, but they were both kind of in this situation, or in this scenario, I guess I should say, both were bad, but one was lesser of two. So, and also, Khonshu gave he gave Layla a choice. She rejected him, and he also gave, and he told Ammit about how she'd take away other people, take away the choice, but he didn't give Marc a choice, because Marc was gonna die if he didn't become Khonshu's avatar. So again, that begs the question of, did Marc really have a choice? And and with the truth, how Khonshu hid the truth from Marc about how troubled he really was, essentially hiding Jake from Marc and Steven, essentially still controlling Marc and Steven. And also with Layla, how she made the choice, because when Steven called her, she did not have to, she could have easily made the choice to ignore the phone call from Marc, or from who she thought was Marc, I guess I should say. And she could have very easily chose to leave Steven, though she morally she couldn't. And the idea, and we also get this thing between Marc and Layla and Steven about how what Layla wanted from Marc was honesty, and that was the one thing that Marc couldn't give her, because he couldn't essentially accept his truth, and he had trouble accepting his truth because he didn't want to admit that he like had a mom who beat him, and like these are things he didn't want to admit, and he didn't want to admit what happened. Like he didn't want to admit who he thought of himself as, and kind of because Marc, we saw earlier how Harrow said that Marc wouldn't tell Layla the truth because then she would see him as what he saw himself as, a man unworthy of love. Which I just realized is now the irony of having the song called A Man Without Love. But anyways, but just the idea that Marc thinks of himself as a killer even as a child, because like he blames, because of his mom, he blames himself for the death of his brother. And so I have all these different things about offering like choice and truth, and like false choice, and like truth with dealing with relationships, and going back to that because I just realized I never finished that thought. This is like what Layla wanted out of Marc was truth, and Marc couldn't give her the truth until he confronted his own truth, thanks to Steven, because Steven sort of forced Marc to show him the truth, and then it was after that that they became more harmonized. And also with the relationship between Steven and Layla, how like it was kind of built on truth, because right off the bat Steven was honest with Layla, and like he was like, I don't know what's going on, like I know, like you're calling me Marc, but my name's Steven Grant and I work in a gift shop, and like I'm in danger and I don't know what I'm doing, and I think you might be able to help me and I need your help. And Layla, when she like learned the truth about Steven, she was able to, I think, accept like that situation, and also was able to, I think, trust Steven a bit more, though that kind of messed things up a bit with Marc, I think, because when she got to talk to Marc again, she was upset about like Marc hiding that Steven from him, and so it's just interesting that the idea of truth and choice that's being presented throughout here. But also, to me, this ending kind of continues more proof of my theory that Moon Knight is one part of the whole, I call it the rebooting of the MCU. So, if you don't remember the last time I talked about Moon Knight, I had a theory that eventually this is all gonna lead, that this whole thing is gonna lead to Young Avengers. How Phase 4 is gonna lead to Young Avengers. And having just seen Multiverse of Madness, I must say, but I feel like my theory is even more proven, so kind of spoilers. Sorry. Spoilers for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So, at the end of Multiverse of Madness, we see how Wanda destroyed Darkhold, and then in the Wong's training, like more sorcerers, including America Chavez, and Strange is able to move on from Christine and sort of still be a sorcerer. But then he's slightly corrupted by the Darkhold, and then in the post-credit scene he meets up with Clea, saying that she needs help to stop an incursion that he caused, and Strange helps, and they go into the dark dimension. So we see that there are also universes that Billy and Tommy Maximoff are alive in, and we also know that America Chavez has learned or worked on her power more and is able to now control it. So because of the whole limo that says Spectre, what my current theory is that Phase 4 is essentially going to kick off a new era of the MCU. And I say that because not only do we have Sam Wilson now as Captain America, and we have Elijah Bradley, who is Patriot, I think, in the comics. And I mentioned about Billy and Tommy Maximoff, who are Speed and Wiccan, and have their own powers, and are also part of the Young Avengers. We have Kid Loki, who we met in the Loki series, and we have Yelena and Hawkeye and Kate Bishop, and also Hawkeye. So what I'm wondering is if now, because Steven said about wanting to save the world, I'm wondering if now Strange, Clea, Sam, and Marc and Steven. Yeah, Strange. Sorry, I'm losing track here. Strange, Sam, Wong, Marc and Steven, and maybe Yelena even. If they're going to essentially become, like, kind of the new, like, SHIELD in a bit. And they're gonna recruit, like, Kid Loki, America Chavez, Billy, Tommy Maximoff, and Elijah, and Kate into the Young Avengers. And because I know it's been said that Oscar Isaac hasn't like renewed his contract or anything with Marvel, but I don't know if they're just saying if like they're gonna do it later, but they have to like wait to set it up first. Because next month Miss Marvel is coming out, and we get more representation with having a Muslim superhero with Miss Marvel, whose name is Kamala Khan. So, because I have also said on here that my biggest thing with the MCU is that there's just so much content that it is like it takes forever to keep up with it all, because you can't just go into it like partway through, because you won't understand it unless you watch like the very first Iron Man movie. I watched like all the post-credit scenes and everything leading up to Endgame and all of that. So that's part of my theory that they're gonna essentially reboot the MCU, because Moon Knight, like, I think there was something in the, like, in the one of Marc's passports had said that he didn't blip or something like that. So we know this takes place in the MCU because they also mention the ancestral plane, and Madripoor gets mentioned. But so we know it takes place in like the MCU, but we have no connection to any other MCU events. Like, you can go straight into Moon Knight and understand it without having to watch any of the other series, which I love. So that's at least my theory, is that the MCU is gonna get rebooted with not only new characters, but new characters that are more diverse. So we finally get the representation that people need. Because not only is, as I said, like Layla and Arabic woman and Egyptian, but Marc, with Marc, or with Moon Knight being, I want to say, now I'm not sure how this technically works, because like Marc has a more American accent and Steven has more of an English accent, and Jake we see exclusively speaks Spanish. So I don't know if that means, is that supposed to mean that Marc's Latino? So, and if I get that wrong, please correct me. But we have Marc with being Latino. We have American Chavez not only being I think a lesbian, but or American Chavez also being I think Latino too. We have I'm sorry, I'm playing it again. We have Billy and Tommy, though in the comics at least, I believe one's gay and one's bi, though I could be wrong, and this is comics, keep in mind. I'm not sure about Elijah, and I'm also not sure about Kate, but we have Elijah, who is black, and we have Katie, who is also female. We have Kamala, who is Muslim, and yeah, so we have, and also with Marc, we have DID, which I'm not sure, which I'm not going to speak on whether it is good representation or not, because that is not my place to do that. But yeah, actually that's all I'm going to say about that. But we do with Marc having dissociative identity disorder, that's something that's something we haven't seen in the MCU before, is having a character with an actual like diagnosed actual diagnosed mental illness. Though you could argue that, oh, and Jewish. I forgot about that. Marc also being Jewish. But even though I'm pretty sure other characters in the original 6, like Iron Man 3 was about Tony's PTSD, though nobody, like, there wasn't anybody who actually, like, diagnosed him with it. I guess you could argue Jarvis did when he said that Tony was having a panic attack, but, like, it was a very clear case of PTSD in Iron Man 3. And also you could argue Natasha has PTSD from her time in the Red Room. Bucky, PTSD from the things he did. Sam, PTSD from being a veteran and losing his friend. Steve, the PTSD from going from being in war and then going from, like, one entirely different, from one period of time to a whole new period of time where everyone he ever knew has died. And, like, Wanda with grief, like, that's entirely what WandaVision was about grief and depression. And Thor, dealing with depression too. But to actually have a character though that's, like, fully diagnosed and actually being treated properly, as far as I'm aware, because, like, yeah, Iron Man 3 made a big deal out of it, but then, like, Thor's depression was kind of, like, made a joke in Endgame, because they made him fat and didn't properly, like, have him, like, show him actually dealing with it. Like, they kind of just hold on. They showed he had it, and that Thor was fat because of it, but, like, they didn't actually show him trying to heal from it, which is what I'm excited about Thor: Love and Thunder for. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see what the MCU has in store for the future, and I'm very excited and hope we see Moon Knight on our screens again, because I'm thinking Moon Knight's becoming one of my favorite characters, because I love the costume design. I love the sort of rough and like, edginess of Marc, and then the lovable, sassy Steven, and just, like, an accent. So for Jake, no, I'm curious to see how that's gonna work now. But yeah, I just want more Moon Knight content. So yeah. Alright, well, I think that is actually all I have for today. Yeah, I really like this series and can't wait for more. So, thank you for watching, or listening. If you want to learn more about NAFCO, you can head over to nafco.org, which will also be linked in the episode description, to not only learn more about our sponsors, you can donate to NAFCO and to the podcast as well if you'd like, and to learn more about our future projects and our upcoming events. And you could also go to my website, which will also be linked in the episode description, where you can learn more about the projects I've been in, what projects I have coming up, and also you can head on to my social medias to not only know when I upload another episode, but also to look at stuff I created, and also hear me talk about leverage. Speaking of leverage, well, actually, but anyways, so the next time you will hear me, I am going to be, sorry, back it up. So, because I am in the process, so if you didn't realize, I have been posting 2 episodes a week. At least I've tried to post 2 episodes a week. And if I'm being honest, that is kind of tiring. And I say that because it takes a while to like get the notes and then record and then edit it and then put it together. So, and I have other projects not only do I need to work on, but I'm also going to be moving here soon into my very first apartment. So basically so I'm going to be sticking to at least 1 episode a week. So I'm going to try and do 1 episode a week for now on. So yeah, as much as I love doing these, I need time. I need more time so I can like start packing my stuff up and get other things situated so I can move. And so the next time you'll hear me, I am once again, I decided I'm going to start a new series based on a show called, I'm going to do a new podcast, next podcast episode. Back it up again. The next podcast episode I'm going to be talking about episode 1 of a show called Almost Paradise, which stars one of my favorite actors, Christian Kane. And I'm going to be once again joined by my good friend Alex. And yeah, we're gonna talk about Almost Paradise. It's gonna be chaotic and it should be a good time. So thank you all so much for watching. Keep in mind that you can not only leave us a review on iTunes, but you can also follow us so that way you can get notified when a new episode goes live. And you can also DM me on my social media, which is linked in on my website, which is in the episode description. You can DM me any ideas for any movies, TV show, or films you'd like me to review. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.